Davos'tan yayınlarımız devam ediyor. Bu bölümde değerli bir yayın konuğum var. Keller'la birlikteyiz. Kendisi Barclays'in küresel araştırma direktörü. Hi Christian, thanks for joining our program.
Hey, welcome. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to be here again after last year with you. We are just in front of the US House, by the way, and we are looking forward to Trump's speech tomorrow. What do you think he's going to say tomorrow?
First of all, I think it's a very, very relevant speech. I think, even if people come here to discuss business, geopolitics has taken over everything. I think the Greenland question will be key. He will mention it tomorrow. I also believe, however, he will talk a lot about domestic politics in the US, things he will do to address the affordability issue, etc. He may not call it that way, but I think that will be a big part of his speech as well.
Christian, you had several meetings here, very important panels as well. What is the most interesting thing that you have heard till now?
Well, not to be too repetitive, but I do think people do care about geopolitics, and in particular for Europe now, it's a moment where Europe can no longer appease the US. So it is very crucial. And I think for markets, it would be a deep rift if there was something that escalates on Greenland. The other part I think it's interesting about AI is, we've been here now for the last few years, and AI became immediately, AI came and people were extremely interested. Then afterwards, we had a situation where people said, oh, but it costs a lot of energy. That was last year. And now you have a situation whereby people ask about the returns. They say, when will AI give me a return? And I think that's an interesting question because it's relevant for markets.
Yeah, this is so interesting street, by the way. We are just outside of Davos, and all the people are here, and the protesters are also here waiting for Trump and everything. And the activities outside Davos are also more interesting maybe than from inside. What do you say?
Well, I think it's always like this. This time Davos is huge, right? Because Trump is coming, huge delegation, a lot of people, and there's always a lot of the business activity and a lot of the interesting meetings don't always happen in the Congress Center itself. And I think this is, again, the same now. And as I said, it's about geopolitics, but it's also about, a little bit of squeeziness about the AI question. Can the valuation go on, or is there a moment of truth at some point, that could potentially question some of the valuations that we see in AI, which is so important for the entire US stock market and for the world, right?
There's this US-Europe tension right now. How do you think this tension will affect the economies in general and especially euro-dollar parity?
Well, I think if it comes to an escalation, we are talking about Trump imposing tariffs on the US, on Europe on the 1st of February, and Europe, which it said would retaliate. I think that would be bad for markets, and I think we already saw this. I think dollar weakness is actually the reaction. Probably we already seen some of it, because I think there would be a move from international investors reconsidering their U.S. investments, and it will hurt Europe as well. But it will be bad for markets in general, I think.
Do you expect a crash down in the stock markets this year?
Sorry, say it again.
Do you expect a crash down in the stock markets?
No, we don't. And I would say one thing. If for one moment you block the noise, like the noise behind us, in general markets are doing this, right? They have the noise cancellation on. The economic data in the US has been continuing to be quite constructive. And even Europe is showing some uptick. So if you look really at the data and block the noise, it's not a bad outlook.
So is there a bubble in terms of debt and AI also in the markets?
I wouldn't call it a bubble yet, but I think we are at a very interesting point now whereby AI initially was all financed through, the cash that these companies had, their own earnings. And now we're getting to a point where a lot of the infrastructure requires them to take on debt. And, we are in the beginning of it. There's a lot more now. A lot of private credit is involved, which is less transparent. But I would say that, it's something on markets' minds, and that is something being discussed here too in meetings.
Before the web actually, the Davos started, you have published this Economist's Outlook report, and you are the participants, one of the participants. What is the biggest risk, according to the economists?
Well, I think we discussed them already. I think really one risk is if there would be anything that's disrupting, in a way, the tech investment theme. I think it's a theme, so that is one risk. As I said, I think there are they could be external, that someone finds a different way to do AI, which is completely different what we do now, There could be also, however, this geopolitical issue that we discussed, and that is, it's very live, right? It's no longer just interesting. Geopolitics has become very consequential.
What about countries like Turkey, emerging markets? What do you expect for them for this year?
Well, in general, the environment for emerging markets has been quite good. And we've seen this, last year was a fantastic year for emerging markets in general. Investors are looking for other places to invest in. Global growth is quite okay. Trade, has not been hurt as much by the tariffs as one thought. And, there's still relatively easy global financial conditions. So all this really is something that speaks for emerging markets. So even there we are quite optimistic, to be frank.
So what about specifically on Turkey? What is the recent news about in terms of foreign investors' look on Turkey? What can you say?
Well, I think we discussed these things in the past. I think there are different type of investors, right? There are investors that look for, FDI. But, I talk a lot to market investors. And market investors, they want a continuation, I think, what we've seen in Turkey in the last few years, and that is an incredible central bank, continued stability in the sense of the path of inflation coming down and interest rates coming down. I think that's already enough. Turkey has a lot to offer. It's a high interest rate. It's a good carry, as we call it. If there is credibility that this continues, I think this is something investors will already appreciate.
So you expect the rate cuts cycle continue in Turkey?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
What about the inflation outlook?
Well, we see it coming down, and we see that the central bank will continue to actually carefully reduce interest rates so that the real rate retains a certain level, that you don't move ahead and cut interest rates before inflation comes down. I think this has been a very good recipe, and the central bank has been following it. And I think as long as they do that, the markets will continue to appreciate, and that builds credibility. That's what it's all about.
Last question, the growth expectation of yours in terms of global economy this year and euro-dollar parity expectation for this year?
Well, we have growth around 3-point-something%. I mean, roughly tell you, we see Europe around 1-point-something, US 2-point-something, and China probably 4 to 5. This is in a way, I think, not that different from last year. And then on the dollar, it depends a lot. Honestly, tomorrow the speech could already make a huge difference. If not, we think there will not be that much movement because, the return on capital in the US continues to be good. If you don't disrupt this, people want to continue to be invested in dollar assets. They may over time try to diversify themselves. But, if we don't get a geopolitical disruption, we think that the dollar may weaken slightly over time, but it will not crash.
I said last but not least, the Fed issue and the Powell, the term finishes in May. And do you think we can hear something from Trump about Fed as well?
Yes, very soon. He said actually that he would say something around Davos. So maybe even today, tomorrow, he may give us the news. Again, the markets are surprisingly relaxed about this. Even if you thought like the last few weeks when there was a lot of headlines, if you look at certain markets about inflation expectations, very stable. So the market is not as concerned about Fed independence. The market believes in the end this will be a Fed that continues to produce roughly 2% inflation and will not be, so to say, directly influenced by the White House.
Okay. Christian, thank you so much for making this time from your busy schedule.
Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Berfu.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.